TopMedTalk.
Well, here we are at Anesthesiology 2021, the annual meeting of the American Society of Anesthesiologists. We are rounding out this weekend with our very last interview. I'm Desiree Chappell, and I'm joined by my co-host, Professor Monty Mythen. Hello, Monty.
Good morning, Desiree. It is great to be coming up on good afternoon.
It is.
It is great to be here, and with mixed emotions, I must say, because we have had an amazing time. It's been great to be here. Thank you to the generosity of the ASA. It's great to see people in person. But this is our last interview for this meeting.
It is. And Professor Sol Aronson. Hello, Saul.
Hi, Desiree. What can I say? It's been lovely to be with real people in a real place, and it's been an amazing 2.5 days of just, one great interview after the other.
That's right. And being with friends, people we haven't seen in so long, it's been absolutely fantastic. Well, jumping right in, guys, I really want to bring in our next guest, Dr. Dale Peterson. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Dale, for those who may not know you, I know there are probably very few out there, but tell us just a little bit more about yourself.
So I am now the immediate past president.
Yes,
I have a few more duties until Wednesday, and then I will be the past president. Anyway, and in my other professional life, I am actually by training a pediatric anesthesiologist and boarded in intensive care medicine as well. But the last few years, I've really concentrated on administrative responsibility. So I am now the Chief Operating Officer for our healthcare system, which is Driscoll Children's Healthcare System. And so I'm over the hospital, the physician practice group, and our health plan. Actually, I was president of our health plan for about 13 years with about 230,000 mostly children, actually, but pregnant women and a Medicaid program. And so that's really been fun, to go from taking care of one patient at a time to really taking care of, all of South Texas children in a systematic way, and looking at healthcare policies and payment and how we can, take care of our communities better, and getting into that population health aspect.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. That's a lot, a lot of work there. It's interesting, the leadership aspect of that. How did you kind of get into that role?
Well, I think it started way back when I was one of two pediatric anesthesiologists that came in. So I was on every other night call for the first 5 years. It's like, I got to get a better plan than this, And so eventually I figured out how we were going to grow, and we were affiliated with a university. And I said, let me take over the billing, and the contracts were outdated. I took over all of that, and I said, I'm going to cancel all these contracts and renegotiate all the contracts. So I started really getting into the financial aspects of running a practice and organizing it and growing it. And then the hospital administrator, I was spending a lot of time in the ICU. I was doing a lot of cardiac anesthesia. We were kind of in the heyday of figuring out new procedures for children with congenital heart disease. It was really a fun time. And he said, look, the ICU is in chaos. Would you please come over and take over the ICU as well? So I had those administrative responsibilities, and then grew that, and, provided the 24/7 coverage. And then another hospital administrator comes along, and he says, we're starting this health plan, and we really want you to help us be a medical director for the specialists. And I'm like, look, I'm already working 80 hours. I have too many full-time jobs already, and I'm burned out. And he says, well, what do you want? And I said, well, what do you want? And so I said, well, I still love patient care, and I'm still not ready to give that up. And so I'm willing to take call in the ICU. I'm willing to be in the OR 2 or 3 days a week, and I am willing to help you with your new health plan. And I eventually became president and CEO. And, when I started off, we had about 10,000 members and about $10 million in revenue. And when I left as president, I still oversee it, but I have a layer underneath me. We're up to 230,000 members, and it's $750 million in revenue. So really supporting the whole system of care and all the losses we have on the physician payment side, because Medicaid payments are so bad that we're able to figure out a way of subsidizing it so we can provide that quality and accessible care for the children of South Texas.
Wow, that is amazing. I'm like speechless.
My head is about to explode.
That's amazing.
Well, it goes back, Saul, to Jim Aaronson, and fortunately I had this chair.
Aaron's trained anesthesiologist.
Yeah, and Saul knows, and it was like, always say yes. Of course, my husband, I think, resented him ever since that. But always say yes when somebody asks you to take on a new responsibility, and
I think you're singing to the choir on that one.
That was the formula, wasn't it?
Yes.
I'm sure people are thinking, they've listened to all the things that you're doing. I mean, formal training. I mean, how did your experience in that?
Well, I was an trained anesthesiologist, and then eventually, it really, I have no background in accounting. A lot of that was OJT, but then at one point, and my husband calls it my midlife crisis, but in my 40s, I actually did go back and get a master's in healthcare administration from Trinity University, which is very respected. About a quarter of the CEOs in Texas got their master's at Trinity University to formalize it. Of course, I was president of the Texas Society at the time, already had 2 children, and then, I ended up with a third on the way that was sort of a surprise because I was told I couldn't have any more children. I was grateful because I always wanted to have more, but it was sort of like, so sometimes I think God must have a very good sense of humor, a strange sense of humor, that, I signed up for this master's program and have these other responsibilities, and okay, I'm going to bless you with another baby at age 41,
Oh my gosh.
But, I love kids, and they're always God's gift and a blessing. So,
absolutely.
Anyway.
Wow, that sounds so interesting. So you've been leading in this healthcare system. You're an immediate past president of the ASA. There has to be some major similarities between these two groups.
Well, I think Doris Kearns Goodwin gave a talk on leadership, and I've been asked more recently to do a lot more talks and visit with people on leadership and what does it take to be a leader. And I do think that anesthesiologists, but people have, I think, a lot of those qualities that they can build on if they think about it. And I think what's really put a fine point on some of these qualities has been the crisis of the pandemic. And I think one of the biggest qualities is humility. I think humility is what really makes a great physician, knowing when you don't know something, knowing when to ask for help when there's a crisis. And it's also, not being a know-it-all or think you know everything, even though you may be a very smart and well-educated person. Yeah. But I think we learned that as leaders in healthcare systems during the pandemic. We have about 3,000 in our organization, and it's like, here are the rules right now based on this evidence. And then, then the rules change.
2 days later, they change.
And so I started preempting, the guidance is by saying, this is what we know today.
Yeah.
And this is what we're doing today based on what we know. And that really could change tomorrow. But what you have to learn as a leader, and this gets into my next point, is about 80% of people are concrete thinkers.
Yeah.
And 20% are a little bit more abstract, and they can deal with this change. It's very hard for people dealing with continuous change.
Yeah.
And so that's where I think another quality of being a good leader is communication. I'm still learning that. I think that's where our failures, whether it's in patient care and doing handoffs or as a system in communicating.
So if I may, how do you communicate with 3,000 people effectively?
Well, that's a big challenge, Monty, and sometimes I get irritated and I have to kind of hold it in a little bit because obviously we use electronic communications, emails. I have my Monday morning outreach version every Monday to all of our staff. And I try to do some storytelling to try to, because I'm getting down to, I've got everything from physicians down to food service workers, environmental care. You're trying to get to the whole organization. But it's not enough. It's not enough. And then I think, we learned this at ASA too when we were in the midst of the crisis. We had never done this before, but we did teletown halls. We had some 8,000 people on the teletown hall where we were actually teaching anesthesiologists how to convert anesthesia gas machines into ventilators because of the ventilator shortage. Literally that week, we had to like institute that in New York City. So teletown halls, I think that video and having that question and answer in that open forum, but that's not enough either. And, we're a small enough place that I actually had to walk the halls. I had to go into the ICUs. I'd see people on rounds and, hey, and it was obvious people hadn't read their email. They hadn't been to the teletown hall. And it's really doing that. It's being on the huddles in the morning. We have huddles with all of our leaders at 8:30 every morning, and really being very clear on the prioritization with my directors to go to the managers to really, you need to communicate this to your staff today. And so it's a challenge, Monty, but I think you have to use all avenues. And here's another key I heard from a psychologist. It typically takes about 8 times to communicate something before it gets through.
You're doing well with 8.
Mary Dale, we talked a lot over the last 2.5 days about change management, and of course communication is a strong component to that, and leadership is front and center for instituting change. But it's hard. And so how do you address culture? How do you address trust? How do you address emotion as a leader to get the message across?
Well, I think it's really hard, and it's very helpful if you have the right culture in an organization. And how do you get there? And so I think it really does go back to the mission of the organization, whether it's the ASA mission, advancing the practice, securing the future, or, the mission or the vision of our facility and our whole system until all children are well. And it's really, I would hope that the people that are attracted to work in our healthcare system are married to that mission. And so I think it's always about the why. When you're trying to get people to go that extra mile and put in that extra bit or deal with change that may be hard. And it's why are we doing this? And it's because we want to get from here to here. And really, and these are the steps we need to go to along the way. So I think it's the why. I also think that if you can show empathy with what they are going through and how hard it is, and sometimes you may not even have the answer for them. I had so many ASA members writing to me, during my presidency, during COVID, and I it was hard. You had women writing in saying, I have 2 young children at home. I have, an elderly parent living with me. And I go to work, and this is, of course, before vaccines. I go to work, and I just live in fear that I'm going to bring this home to my family. And, of course, I'm living with 2 87-year-old women as well. And then I have a college student. It's multi-generational. I don't, should I be living in the basement, or is it okay if I shower and then go into my house? I can't tell them that. But I can be a good listener. I can be empathetic. I can thank them for what they are trying to do in saving patients' lives and still protecting their family. And so I can listen. I think, as a leader in an organization, we've been through some crises in Texas in my own. We went through Hurricane Harvey. I had many employees that lost their homes. They lost everything. And I think, I would visit with each one of them personally and on a regular basis and try to help them get back to normal, work with the insurance adjusters, find tangible funding for them to try to make do. And so I think when they see that you care about them and their families, and their families, when you ask them to do something extra, they're willing to do that.
Yeah. Great point.
Can I have one follow-up on that? Because there's, in the crisis that we've faced, we know we've all got recruitment challenges. We've got a whole load of staff that we recognise are potentially burnt out, and we're trying to look after them. But one of the biggest challenges we're facing in the United Kingdom is retention. What can we do as leaders to try and retain our staff, particularly the ones who are sort of flirting with retirement from clinical practice and thinking, actually, I might have had enough?
I think that's a very challenging issue, and I think once again it's about the environment that they're working in and feeling appreciated. rarely is it solely just about the money. It's about that sense of mission and family, feeling like you belong and you're appreciated. Obviously, you need to be competitive with, and of course, it's kind of outrageous, how fast the market has changed, during the crisis. But I do think that, making rounds, having deliberate things where you thank people. And really, I think also providing some tangible things. So I'll give you an example where it's not enough to say, okay, we're going to give you a subscription to a yoga class or meditation. That's not enough, right? Yeah. So I was hearing from my nursing staff and medical staff how challenged they were, especially the women. Really in the spring of last year when schools were closed. And they were trying to do their full-time jobs, and then they get home, and you got 8-year-olds, and they've got all this homework, or they were supposed to be online. I mean, it was really insanity. Yep. Insanity. And they were barely getting through. And so, when we were going to have a delay of schools and all that, I went to our system, and I said, look, we have got to help. And so we hired 6 school teachers. We had a lot of people that were working away, so we turned the business offices into classrooms, our auditorium.
Visionary.
And we, and so they were still in their ISD, their independent school district, and had the virtual learning, but you had a teacher or coach to help them through, so, Javier and Susie or whoever could have their lessons done. And then when the parents actually get home, you can have family time and not be worried and have that extra pressure of your child failing in school and not learning.
Very cool. Visionary. No, that's
absolutely.
What is a leader? That's a leader.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, just to switch gears, I do want to say, thank you for your leadership. I mean, it obviously has, really impacted a lot during your presidency. I know that there are some programs when it comes to executive level kind of leadership within the ASA. Can you talk a little bit more about those?
Certainly. I mean, we have some great programs. We have the Kellogg School. It's a leadership program. That's kind of a shorter term course. We have a partnership with the American College of Healthcare Executives, of which I'm a member, and we're the only specialty organization that has this special partnership. So you can go to an ASA meeting, either this meeting here or a practice management meeting, and you will be able to get credit with ACHE. And ACHE has just a wealth of speakers and knowledge and educational products to help you in your leadership journey. If people would go to our website and go to our leadership section, you can take the exam or the profiles and do all that kind of stuff to see what your strengths and weaknesses are. We all have them. It's all part of that double-edged sword, that you may have with your spouse as well. But I think learning about yourself and where your weaknesses and strengths are. And for me, it's all about making sure that I have people around me that are helping me or supplanting my weaknesses, and then I can use my strengths to support them. And so that's on our website as well. So we have a lot of resources to help you in your leadership journey, no matter if you're starting out as a newly minted, person in private practice and want to be a leader in your group, or you're a young faculty person or whatever.
Yeah, there's definitely some, a push for connection with executives within your hospitals as well. Why are anesthesiologists, why is that so important for anesthesiologists to do that?
Well, I am biased on this, of course, but I think anesthesiologists can make incredible leaders in a hospital or a healthcare organization, and I'll tell you why. Number one, the ORs and the ICUs, which we know intimately well, are the economic engines for that whole health system. They are the economic engines. You are not making a lot of margin on your med-surg floors. It is the ORs and the ICUs. And I know Saul's done a lot of work in this area, but if you can create value in that, in that whole continuum of care, all the way from prehabilitation to post-habilitation, and really design that journey, getting the right patients for the right procedures at the right time in an optimal condition, hospitals can do very well. I think we are detail-oriented enough and we know how to organize things, but I also think we're really great at Plan A, Plan B, Plan C, and crisis management, which unfortunately a lot of systems have had to deal with. And so, we had a freeze in Texas in February. Let me tell you, it's a challenge to try to run a hospital when all of a sudden you have no water. Hospitals take a lot of water. That's what runs your boilers to provide heat. That's what runs your steam sterilizers. That's what runs your dialysis units. And that's not to mention just the sanitation piece of showers and washing hands. And so I think learning, and we had this in the ASA, learning about, when COVID hit, every week I would get with the CEO, Paul, and I said, these are the 3 things we need to do this week. So there's a whole lot of things out there, but you have to focus on the 3 things. And one of the top priorities should always be, it's about the people. It's about the people. And for me, as an ASA leader, it was about the people that were taking care of the patients. It's kind of like, in the airplane, you put your mask on first before you do it with your child, right?
Yeah.
Okay, the anesthesiologist needs to have protection and PPE so they're not sick and out of the workforce being able to take care of it. So we were the first medical organization to advocate for full N95 PPE for anesthesiologists. I mean, I had an anesthesiologist that contacted me that was fired from a hospital for wearing PPE. Literally. I mean, this is this nonsense that was going on. So it is about the people so we can take care of the patients.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, in our last couple minutes, tell us about some of the core issues. I mean, you've had a lot of experience as president. You've seen, really insight into different things. What do you think are some of the top issues and things that you're going to be dealing with in anesthesiology in the next, 5 to 10 years?
Well, I think we have a lot of core issues, and it's really, unfortunately, around economics. It's, ensuring that we get appropriate payment for services. All your anesthesiologists that are looking at this know that we're in a different payment system than the rest of medicine, and we have to continue to work on that. That was my number one thing coming into the ASA presidency that I wanted to concentrate on. We got a little bit sidetracked with COVID. I mean, we were still working on it, but not to the degree that we need to, and really it is our number one priority, whether it's, the No Surprises Act. We obviously don't want patients to have surprise medical bills, and we worked very hard to get appropriate language in the legislation, and unfortunately we now have the interim final rule that completely ignored what was written in legislation. So now we're working on how do we figure that out. I think it's about workforce. I think people are feeling the pinch. To your point, Monty, a lot of people are retiring, and people are not wanting to work the 80 hours that maybe we did initially. We're not in that place anymore, and that's fine. I think that's good, actually. But we've got to figure out how to get more folks in the pipeline, even though anesthesiologists has been so blessed because we actually have more demand to become an anesthesiologist than we have positions open. So it's really encouraging everybody to open up more anesthesiology residency positions so we can increase that pipeline to take care of patients. And so I think those are really 2 really big issues that are facing the specialty. But there's so much other positive, exciting things, just the science, the silver linings that we've learned about the pandemic, the science, the mRNA technology, learning how to utilize technology better to our advantage in communication and outreach, our teletown halls. So I'm so, I think there's a very bright future. And my middle son is actually an anesthesiologist. He's just his first year in private practice. And his dad, my husband's a cardiologist. He could have chosen that. I did not really try to steer him into anesthesia, but once he took one preceptor course at UTMB in anesthesia,
sure.
Nothing else matched up to it. And that's what I still believe, that there is no better specialty than the specialty of anesthesiology.
I just have to say really quickly, UTMB, University of Texas Medical Branch, Galveston, Mary Dale Peterson was my teacher many moons ago.
She looks way better than you do now, Saul. I'm just going to say.
I was a lowly, stupid resident, and
how did you deal with it?
You were my attendant.
How was he?
He was always great. But you know what I'm giving him a hard time about? I haven't heard about the next chapter, but he just retired, and here I am. Okay,
still going,
his
girl.
T-shirt, and I'm not retired. My system CEO said, "You got to promise me 5 more years." You know,
I am sure they did. Well, Mary Dale, this has been a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much for taking time to sit down with us to talk about your experience as ASA Past President and in leadership in the health systems. It has been really enlightening, so thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Desiree, Monty, and Saul, for this great opportunity.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening to TopMedTalk. We absolutely want to say so much gratitude to the American Society of Anesthesiologists for the partnership to be here in the exhibit hall, able to have these amazing conversations over the last 3 days. It has been brilliant. We have had a wonderful time and some great conversations. Also to all of our sponsors that help TopMedTalk and EBPOM be here as well.
And we should just remind people that the content is enduring.
Yeah.
So this space, the education hub that you've come into, it is open the whole time. It's free open access to people. Free open access. Which Saul finds very hard to believe. That's real free. For the whole of this month, for all of the content, and all of our podcast materials remain free.
Yes.
So please do encourage people to come in, look at all the great content. Aside from the ASA content, there's 1,500 podcasts, there's a year's worth of conference material. But prioritize listening to these great conversations we've had here with our partners at the ASA. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thanks for listening.
TopMedTalk. Thanks for downloading TopMedTalk. Don't forget to subscribe via your podcatcher. Don't forget to check us out on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And also, don't forget, TopMedTalk is the broadcasting arm of EBPOM, Evidence-Based Perioperative Medicine. We'd love you to find out more about that. If you check out ebpom.org, you can find low prices on some of the conferences we're organising around the world. Many of them are virtual and don't even involve you leaving your own home. Check out ebpom.org now.